Growing for Market podcast.
Yeah, I mean, if I've learned anything about the farmers that I worked with in Wisconsin and the farmers that I know of more broadly in the Midwest, being able to do it yourself and being in charge of those systems is really at the core of what Midwest farmers do. And solar is just another thing that you're harvesting. So it's along those exact same principles. The sun, whether or not we perceive it, does come out a lot of the days and a lot of hours compared to, people think, oh, it's only going to work in Arizona and whatnot. Actually, a lot of people don't know that on your sunniest winter day at noon, you're going to have better solar production than your sunniest summer day in July, because solar panels don't actually like to get super hot. So when they overheat or there's just a lot of heat in the system, then that leads to some inefficiencies, but they can operate just fine on a pretty cold day. They just need the sun. So it's really an exceptional technology.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets, like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm April Parms Jones, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 33 years, the magazine for flower and vegetable market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait until you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people to find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Today's episode of the Growing for Market podcast is brought to you by BCS America. On our farm, we've had our BCS two-wheel tractor for over a decade, and with no belts to slip, its all-gear-driven construction is still going strong. Though we originally got it for rototilling, we kept it even when we went mostly no-till because it can do so many other things around the farm. From snow blowing, to making raised beds with the rotary plow, to chipping wood, it can do just about anything you might need on a farm with the right attachment. Need to shred a cover crop? A BCS flail mower will make quick work of even the most vigorous cover crop and chop it up so it breaks down quickly. Want to stir in compost or amendments without inverting soil layers? A power harrow turns your BCS into a precise tilthing machine with depth control so you don't mix deeper than you want to. With so many attachments to choose from, it truly is the Swiss Army knife of farm implements. It's why, instead of saying two-wheel tractor, so many people just say BCS. Tractors and attachments are on sale through the end of the year. Visit bcsamerica.com to find sale pricing and your nearest dealer. Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Rimmel greenhouses are proudly built right here in America and shipped to anywhere in the U.S. With technical sales staff members located across the country, many with growing experience, the Rimmel Greenhouses team of experts will serve as your trusted partner every step of the way to ensure that you get exceptional value from your greenhouse investment. Visit Rimmel.com to get a quote today. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to grow food and connect with my customers, not to spend my time glued to a desk. If I could spend less time in spreadsheets and more time out in the field, that would be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for CSA farmers. With tools like custom websites, done-for-you newsletters, CSA member support, flyers and QR codes, customer billing, and more, Farmhand takes care of the admin so you can focus on what you love. And here's the best part. You can learn how it works directly from Farmhand founder Ari Memar. If you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you've probably heard Ari as a guest, sharing his expertise alongside inspiring success stories from the farmers he's helped. As both a hobby farmer and a tech expert, Ari understands your challenges firsthand. He spent years simplifying complex systems to make farming easier and more profitable for growers like you. On average, Farmhand saves CSA farmers 6 to 10 hours a week. That's up to 10 extra hours to spend with your family, in the field, or simply taking a breather. In a complimentary one-to-one demo, Ari will share his wealth of knowledge and show you exactly how Farmhand can streamline your operations, grow your CSA, and help you stay competitive in today's market. Don't miss this opportunity to connect with someone who truly understands the challenges of small farms and has the tools to help you succeed. Book your complimentary demo today at farmhand.partners/GFM. That's farmhand.partners/GFM.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a fabulous guest, and we're going to talk all about solar on the farm. So, today we have the pleasure of having Elise Couillard. She runs a solar and ecological business in Wisconsin. She's based in South Central Wisconsin, and she has clients around the state. She uses her degree in behavioral ecology and her past experiences in environmental science to inform her work, advising conservation organizations about how to incorporate solar and energy efficiency into their operations. She advises clients on planning and designing and financing and monitoring solar projects, especially nonprofit projects. Elise lives in a tiny house and is an advocate for minimalistic living and sustainable living as well. Elise, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So it is a gloomy day today in the Midwest, but the sun is still out somewhere, which is good. So could you tell us a little bit about solar on a farm?
Sure. And I kind of wish that I know I needed to be in good lighting and inside and away from noise, but one inverter that's kind of within eye shot of me right now would tell me, even on this gloomy day, how much solar that array is producing right now, which would be cool for people to know just how much they produce on cloudy days too. But on your farms, it's such a great application because you have both your home use, and especially if you're using it for your office and other activities, that you can kind of connect it to a home meter and home usage, as well as obviously the farm operations that are using usually water resources and different things that are consuming electrical power. I've also worked with a couple of different farmers to replace their gas and propane activities with electrification as well, and then upgrade their solar system accordingly. So there's obviously financial benefits to doing this. Individuals that want to have a little bit more control over their power and their self-sufficiency, as well as incentives that are available statewide, federally, and reducing emissions on your own property, which is ultimately going to help the people that work on that property and produce a healthier product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're saying all the buzzwords of what people are looking for right now: sustainability, being able to have more autonomy and control over, your energy usage, and then also allowing yourself to have more awareness of how much energy you use and how you use it, and ways that you can conserve and ways that you can save money. I love it. I love to save money. So that's exciting. It really is, seems like an empowering sort of thing for a farmer to do. And then they're also able to save a lot of money as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I've learned anything about the farmers that I worked with in Wisconsin and the farmers that I know of more broadly in the Midwest, being able to do it yourself and being in charge of those systems is really at the core of what Midwest farmers do. And solar is just another thing that you're harvesting. So it's along those exact same principles. The sun, whether or not we perceive it, does come out a lot of the days and a lot of hours compared to, people think, oh, it's only going to work in Arizona and whatnot. Actually, a lot of people don't know that on your sunniest winter day at noon, you're going to have better solar production than your sunniest summer day in July, because solar panels don't actually like to get super hot. So when they overheat, or there's just a lot of heat in the system, then that leads to some inefficiencies, but they can operate just fine on a pretty cold day. They just need the sun. So it's really an exceptional technology.
That's really good to know. I really love that idea because sometimes I feel like people are like, oh, well, you have to be warm and sunny and then solar works. Like people have the idea that it works better in a sunny, warm environment. But to know that even on a sunny day in the winter, when it's colder, you still can get all those juicy rays and then your solar is actually happier as well, which I always feel like I love the winter. I think it's a happy time in general. But yeah, I love that idea. I personally lived in Germany for a little while in my younger years, and they had a lot of solar, which I personally was surprised coming from the US because I was in Munich, Germany. It's very cloudy and gray. And I was like, oh, like they have solar? And then I just felt like I was missing out in Ohio because we did not have much solar. So that's good to know that no matter whether it's sunny outside, we can see the sun or not, the solar is still efficient and working.
Yeah, there's a really great software that maps irradiation or just how much of the sun's rays hits a particular geographic area. And so when you compare Germany on that map to Wisconsin, but I'm going to say the rest of the Midwest because it's more northern than Ohio, then Germany is actually getting less sunlight that hits its surface than Wisconsin is. And they power an incredible amount of their grid and their operations with solar. So we could definitely be doing better in the Midwest, and we can definitely take advantage of that resource despite thinking that like we're a little more northern and we don't have as much sun. There's lots of ways to just think about the angle at which the sun rays are coming in and using bifacial panels and just really utilizing the technology to the best of our orientation here at the North. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, how did you get into the solar work and the solar world with farming?
Yeah. So my dad sold his business and my parents started a nonprofit to give out solar panels to schools and nonprofits. They did their first project in 2017 before the nonprofit was really formalized. And at that time, when they set it up, it was just kind of a family organization. My sister and I were on the board. She was living 3 hours away from my parents. I was living 13. And we served to have monthly meetings where we kind of like nodded our heads at our parents and we're like, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And then as we started to see the impact of that work, and I was transitioning from where I was living in Canada back to the US, I really started understanding the biological systems that I had worked in and for my whole life. I was seeing a lot of, and I acknowledged that there was a lot of change in biodiversity loss and things like that. And it seemed to me that despite working with wildlife kind of being my favorite thing, that unless I really worked to have people to adopt other systems than fossil fuels, that I was going to see less and less of these systems that I cared a lot about. So I got more involved. I started working for a solar cooperative first, which works with mutual ownership of systems and same autonomy principle, but with municipalities and library organizations and things like that. But they'll work with farmers and whatnot too. And I was running their communications and a voluntary part of their program called renewable energy certificates. And it just kind of grew from there and became full-time work. And really, I realized that I had the background and the ability to connect with people, that it was the right touch point. Whereas some other kind of sales versions and definitely in Wisconsin, the door-to-door salesmanship, people are really opposed to. So I was finding that I could be more successful to have a really down-to-earth conversation with somebody about solar and its benefits. And not only that, instead of me starting the conversation, me just saying, what do you want for your operations and your project? If you were to have the dream setup right now, kind of more in line with sustainability and self-sufficiency, what would that look like? And then taking that dream and starting to talk through some of the options that I saw, and here's some incentives, and maybe we could apply for this grant. And it just became more of a conversation and a relationship rather than I'm trying to sell you something. And because I'm not an installer, like I'm not going to actually show up and file your interconnection agreement and things like that, and I work with installers, I think that's also enough of a removal that people don't feel like I'm trying to sell them something, is so much as like I'm their partner working with them, helping to figure this out. And we'll look at a number of different bids, and we'll talk about why working with one partner versus another might be a better fit for them. So it just over the years became more and more clear to me since about 2020 or 2021 that this is the space that I need to fill for the foreseeable future to kind of help people transition off of fossil fuels. I don't know about Ohio, but Wisconsin doesn't have any fossil fuel resources. So we send $14 billion out of our economy every single year to purchase those resources. And that's a huge economic loss for our communities instead of harnessing some of these things in our own communities and keeping those dollars local.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And how being solar and having solar being on a farm, and then also your economic ties, how they all tie together. And so, even though people feel like they're all just a little cog in the wheel going round and round, people can make really large differences in their community just by saying, I personally want to be more self sufficient. I want to be more eco and green. I want to save money and improve my own economic future. And you can do all those things just by taking the small step of going solar. So it sounds like you really have to, you offer with your services a lot of troubleshooting of, because I feel like in solar, people have a lot of questions, a lot of myths and misconceptions. And so it's such a resource that you are able to meet and partner with each individual client and then help them to troubleshoot all the different steps and problem solve. And so, how do you come about helping people to kind of create their own, reality regarding solar? Is there conversations that you have, or do you look at the lay of the land and how the sun is crossing over their land, or is it just like how their spirit feels, or what are the kind of some of the steps that you take?
Yeah, so doing a site visit and meeting in person, especially with farmers, I find to be one of the most important. Building that rapport in person. And I think that I'm a pretty good judge of body language.
Yeah.
Working in behavioral ecology, I have to be able to read behavior really well. So sensing that something that I said didn't jive, or I'm losing somebody by using too many acronyms and I need to kind of like back up, as well as those in-person conversations tell me like, this is a person that does want to know in detail what each of these technology, what their inverter is doing, how it talks to their solar panel, how that talks to the grid, like how much information they want, versus the people that I just provide a little sprinkling of detail and their eyes kind of glaze over. And I'm like, okay, those are not the details that they're looking for. And that's fine. And if they ask, I can provide them, but just kind of really only giving them the information that they want and need. We're just so bombarded with information right now. I know myself, there's so many projects that I want to do. And even when I have a really dedicated person that's trying to sell me something or reach out to me, I'm like, I need a week to be able to sit and digest this information and do my own research, because when I commit to something and do something, I want to understand it. And I literally don't have the time right now. And I see that from everyone, but farmers especially. They're working incredibly long hours when it's seasonal work and you're packing everything into that spring to fall. Yeah, you have a break during the winter, except that not, because you're doing holiday markets and really finding that time that somebody can even ask the questions and just have a moment to breathe and say, okay, I can learn a little bit about this. I'm not saying I'm going to pull the trigger on this, but like I'm at least in a space where I can like pull some information in. So doing those site visits, if I can get like electrical bills on the first day or the first visit, that's one of the most valuable to me, because one of the ways I'm a little bit different than an installer is that installers are also handling more leads than they can even jump on right now. So this is nothing against them, but they're designing a system for, self-facing. Like, this is something that they've repeated over and over again, versus if you have a farmer who's getting up really early or working really late into the evenings, or mostly coming to a site and having operations in the evening, that should impact how you orient the arrays, whether or not everything is south-facing, or you have some solar panels that are facing the east and west, because you can really tailor when you're pulling in that electricity. It's not just about making the most electricity, it's about making the electricity, at least in Wisconsin, when you're using it, because we're not really compensated in Wisconsin for producing extra. So if you produce, hundreds more watts at the noon hour when you are not working, not using any power, that's actually not going to benefit necessarily your site. So I try to really tailor making electricity when you're consuming electricity, if possible, and if that's something that is going to be the best financial arrangement for the operation. So those are some of the things that I think about, as well as sensing. Even though I think roof mounts are incredibly efficient and one of the most cost-effective ways to go, I sense a lot of hesitation around people's concern for their roof and roof penetration and things like that. So if I can tell that that's not something I'm going to be able to educate and get past right away, I just move on to say, okay, you've got the land and you want to do a ground mount, no problem. Let's talk about some of the places where it could go. Let's talk about how the trenching and the boring would work, and just kind of letting people guide me with what they're comfortable with.
That's an awesome point. Now, I've never heard before about tailoring your solar panels to when you're going to actually use the electricity. That's like revelatory to me because it's so true. Sometimes there's certain times in your day where you're like not using it at all. And then there's other times where you're really using it a lot, and especially with farming and different types of farming and the setups. And so to be able to have the opportunity to get customization and a tailoring of your solar panels just for your specific needs, that seems like it could be definitely life-changing and groundbreaking for sure. And like you said, every state is different. Some states you do get rebates for giving back your electricity to the grid, and some places you don't. And so knowing that as well also seems like it'd be very impactful in how you set up your solar panel farm. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
We all know that to a farm of any size, your soil is your most steadfast partner, an asset worthy of investing in. Since 1972, Ohio Earth Food has been the go-to source for soil testing, consulting, as well as the highest performing and most cost-effective granular and liquid fertilizers, seed starting soils, foliar sprays, and disease and insect controls. All approved for use on organic farms. They deliver them right to your farm, too. Don't count on luck this year. Start your seeds in their Seed Catapult potting soil and put their Revita fertilizers in the soil before you plant, and rest assured that your plants will have all of the nutrients, stimulants, and energy for whatever comes their way. These natural blends utilize compost, kelp, and humate and are low salt index safe for high tunnels. Feed your soil and let your soil feed the plants. Visit them at ohioearthfood.com, now with branches in Ohio and Wisconsin. ohioearthfood.com. I am so excited to welcome Bootstrap Farmer as a sponsor of the podcast. I've known them for a dozen years, and if anyone tells you nothing is made in the USA anymore, well, they're headquartered and warehoused in Paris, Texas. They make their own all-metal, all-inclusive greenhouse frames of steel made in the USA and fabricated in Texas, and their heavy-duty, reusable propagation and microgreens trays are Midwest-made. With a complete range of supplies, they have just about everything for propagation and growing, including heat mats, ground cover, frost blankets, silage tarps, irrigation, and trellising. Want to color code your seed starting flats? They've got heavy-duty trays that will last for years in a full range of colors, great for keeping farm seedlings separate from retail or just for fun. And they have an experienced team of growers to support everything they sell. If you've heard of the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative providing grants for hoop houses, but have been put off by the paperwork, Bootstrap Farmer has a guide that will walk you through the application process so you can get your hoop house funded this winter. For all that and more, check out Bootstrap Farmer at bootstrapfarmer.com.
And now back to the show. So people who do solar panels on the ground on their farm, what can they grow around it? Can they graze animals around it? How can they still have utilization of the land?
Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about smaller operations, specialty crops, there's also some really neat greenhouse products that are incorporating the solar panels right in the roof of the greenhouse structure. And then you can still enclose it and have some of that climate control and things like that. I'm going to be really bold. And if anybody from the Solar Farm Summit that's been doing this for more years than me is listening and is upset and say pretty much everything, because I really believe that what we have had lack of success with before, or that people think that we've had lack of success with, is, some studies coming out of Europe, some studies coming out of, I attended a number of talks on growing systems in Oregon and things like that. And unless the research has been done on the similar climate as your own, the similar rain propensity, sun propensity, like all of these conditions need to add up to be saying that this is similarly what's going to happen here in the Midwest, or you're talking about a different system. So how they might be setting up systems and having success in Oregon, where their rainfall in the area of the study that I'm talking about is record low compared to Wisconsin. So they're trying to use the panels to retain moisture, which you can do. The plants transpire, it captures on the backside of the panels, and then it drips back down. Great. But if you're in an area that has had high flooding, high water events, and rain is not your biggest concern, you're thinking about something else. So much more, if people are really willing to just tough it out and get these questions answered and try it out, that would be one thing, is kind of start small. Start with one area that you can kind of transition to a solar-based systems and see if it works out. The argument that I would make is that on that same plot of land where you're getting a resource from the plants that you're growing, you can now double or at least have additional value in also having a solar resource that's most likely reducing your operational costs on site. And in talking about those orientations of facing the panels to the south, facing them east and west, things like that, when you face panels to the south, and then you think about where you're planting below or just kind of offset, you can create it so that when the plants in conjunction with those systems are being shaded is when it's the highest heat and sun intensity of the day, which from my research in the Midwest is when plants are least productive anyway. They're usually closing themselves up. They're not highly productive because they can get heat stress. They can lose a lot more water. So you can actually use these as small little microclimates to just improve the conditions of the plants. Mostly here in Deerfield, where my office is based off of, I've been learning about the native grass systems and flowering systems. And in the years where we've had the high droughts and high sun intensity, all of everything behind the solar panels, which are the most shaded, are doing the best. They're happy. They don't have that heat stress, and everything that's in full sun is really struggling, but is still doing okay than the mowed grass, which is even next to that, which is completely brown, right? So I've really only encountered them to be a benefit. I grew tomatoes under solar panels this year, having learned about how they're being grown in Colombia, and was just thinking, man, tomatoes love sun and love heat. Like, what's going on with this? And I would say they produced smaller tomatoes and less of a volume, but I'm overrun by tomatoes every year. So that was like not a problem with just the quantity of tomatoes that I get. I was not worried about getting a few fewer. So know your market. If you sell both retail and wholesale, and you have a relationship that you need to come up with this certain volume, and that's a predetermined contract, then I would say that's less of the system that you turn over right away. But then if you have other things that, if your volume fluctuates a little bit and that's not going to be hugely negatively impactful, then that's a system I would start to see, is there a transition possible here? And I also think as people continue to grow in these growing weather like the weather is less and less predictable, right? And so as that happens, at least if you have lower operational costs that year, as electricity is going up and gas is just going to keep getting more expensive, at least you've pulled down those operational costs in a way that you can maybe buffer some of those impacts a little bit easier. So I think a lot of people are kind of bracing right now, and they don't want to take any more risks than they feel like they're already taking. But I think that this is a calculated, I don't want to call it a risk, a calculated opportunity where your system best. And if you talk to somebody about how your system is working now, but some of the things that are insecure about it, that this is a way that can fit in as an additive resource and not one that detracts from your operations at all.
Absolutely. Those are some awesome points. I love the idea of using the solar panels as a microclimate. I think that's amazing, especially because we're all experiencing temperature fluctuations and they can be very large within a day. It starts off really icy cold and then it goes up to 60 and then it goes back down to icy cold. And so the more ways that people in sustainability and farmers can create their own microclimate and mitigate those impacts, the better. And so it seems like with solar, you're able to save money, empower yourself economically, be self-reliant, and have high resiliency, and then also improve your growing practices. So it sounds like just really wonderful and exciting. I love it.
It's definitely like an adaptive way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a way to really just like adapt to your environment and to your situation and to empower yourself in the process. So, could you talk a little bit about how farmers that you've worked with, how they've been able to see the economic benefit, how they're able to save money or be more resilient and prepared for the next season or to do better financially by allowing themselves to have access to solar?
Yeah, so I believe it was in the fall of 2023 where one of the grants that I follow, the REAP grant, REAP, bumped up from providing a 20 to 25% reimbursement to projects all the way up to 40%. And then at that time, the 30% tax credit for homeowners or commercial owners was also available. So 30 plus 40 is 70%. That's 70% of the cost of your system that's being returned to you in the following tax year, as opposed to that 100%. So I couldn't have imagined that it would get any better than that, that by the end of year two, essentially, you're just trying to recover the costs of 30% of a project. That changes the payback from 12 years to 4, or like it was just absolutely insane, right? So for right now, those incentives are still available. The REAP grant announced new rounds. One closes December 31st. The other is at the end of March. I don't know exactly if it's the 30th or what. And now it's a 50%. So then add that to the 30%, that's 80%. I don't think you're going to do better really than 80% of a project cost coming back to you as tax credits. And if you don't have tax liability, you don't pay a lot of taxes in your tax year, there are other opportunities, at least in Wisconsin. So if anybody in the audience wants to reach out to me, and I can do a little research where you are, how that's available, but there are legal ways to exchange or sell tax credits that you yourself are not kind of eligible for in many different locations. So that's one of the ways to take advantage. And so just financially, I can't see like a better, it's such a good investment in my mind. It's also a guaranteed source versus you can have kind of total crop failure some seasons, depending on what happens at the beginning of the year. If you are somebody who kind of grows three things and there's a total failure in one of them, that's a huge hit for your year, right? Versus harvesting the sun, as of yet, it stays a little bit within percentage of each other. I don't see the sun going away anytime soon. And so that's something that you can really bank on as far as a really predictable reduction of your operational costs during a year. And there's really great ways to kind of model that. You can do it all the way down to the scale of saying monthly, this is how much solar I'm could produce. This is how much that could take off of a utility bill. And then this is what I would look like at the end of the month. So I think those resources are really great. They're developed by both national laboratories that are really interested in energy research, as well as more local organizations that are interested in energy independence and citizen utility boards and things like that. So I would say a lot of them, it was about that financial security. One farmer was really unhappy with his propane use and wanted to get away from propane. That ended up being a cheaper source of heating for him than the electricity. And he still made that decision because he just didn't want to be consuming fossil fuels anymore. He also saw it as a bit of a risk in terms of fires and things like that if something were to happen. So I really respected that decision for individuals that really are very focused on getting off of fossil fuels. I think the fluctuation that we've seen in gas prices as well will just continue. And I think that if anything, if we see any more low prices, that they're going to be quickly followed by prices getting really high and escalating. So I don't think it's a super secure way for people to be heating and things like that. So the getting off a particular resource, making that financial decision, and then a couple of farms that have cooperative relationships that are maybe land trusts and nonprofits and things like that, want it, in addition to it aligning with their missions and environmental stability, they also want to be a face of education and adoption to the people that they talk to and interact with on their property. So the Couillard Solar Foundation has done some great collaborative projects with the Aldo Leopold Foundation. I've had really great meetings with Groundswell, which is a local group here in Wisconsin in Dane County, and just different organizations that are like, we have this huge membership reach. I actually talked to Farmers Union in Wisconsin a number of years ago through Legacy Solar Co-op, and we were like, all the Farmers Union's office buildings, if they're owned, need to be like covered in solar, and still working on that. But different things like that, where entities that are routinely talking to farmers and in these networks, start with your missions there too. That can be hugely impactful for people to see it as a trusted resource and know that this is something that is kind of fiscally responsible and feasible to do. So.
Absolutely. That's an awesome point. I love the idea of how we've talked about farmers, which can be kind of singular, sometimes very solitary work. But when people are deciding to do solar, they really are becoming part of a larger community of other farmers who are also doing solar that can be a resource to them. And then also, like you're saying, the larger community at large through nonprofits, through farmer union, through all sorts of groups that are civically engaged and farmer oriented and minded and are doing the good work are also deciding that they want to go solar. So when you join the solar opportunity, you're really joining a larger community. And I love that idea of having that communal support of resources.
Yeah. Gosh, I hope farmers don't feel alone. That's like that's the last group I'd want to feel alone and isolated. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely. So could you talk a little bit about the Access Hub for farmers?
Yeah. So I've been following the Farmland Access Hub I think American Farmland Trust, there's a couple of different entities that created kind of a coalition to kind of publish it. Now I'm blanking on what exact website you can find it on. But I've been following that because I'm interested in land myself. My tiny house is not parked in its final resting spot, so I hope to get my own kind of farmland and plot soon. But one thing that I noticed that was missing is I'm working on a larger project up north. We'd like to incorporate farmers and give them free access to farm and research. It's likely going to be more textiles and flowers and native plantings and things like that at first because it's on a Superfund site. So they're putting solar in and hoping to kind of heal the land through these natural processes. And through a lot of the feedback at the Solar Farm Summit is that when you kind of design these systems and put them in place and then hope that farmers will just come, and they weren't integrated in the design, they weren't talking about what they would grow or what they do grow, what's a part of their practices, then you created something that could fit really imperfectly with what they do to being not a great of a resource for them to even utilize at all. So I wanted more involvement from them from the start. And we're working on that right now. And we've reached out to some groups, but we haven't had too many people jump on. And absolutely, I understand that Superfund site is absolutely a part of that. And I acknowledge that 100%. But broadly, for any group that wants to do this, I don't know who's capturing that. Like farmers in different regions who are saying, I don't own land. I lease a little bit, but I could do more with land that were just available to me that I didn't have to pay for. I had some other type of arrangement. And I think those interested individuals who are willing to partner at an agrivoltaic site, a site that's going to have solar panels on it, that would only add into these systems, to system awareness and to how developers put a project together. Sometimes they just need the people to say, like, I would plant this and this is how I'm going to do it, and where's the water accessibility and all the things like that. And if it exists, great, let me know, email me, but I haven't found it. So I'm hopeful that these existing farmland access networks, that we just add to it, and we say, are you a farmer? Are you somebody who's interested in farming, an emerging farmer who would be willing to farm at an agrivoltaic site? And then geographically, where are you? And then start partnering these people with some of these larger projects that are going to come up. This is the first project of this size that I've worked on. I pretty much exclusively work on distributed energy resources, which is something behind the meter, meaning that you're really consuming that electricity on site on an existing meter. But the front of the meter projects, where it's in a field, it's in a larger land area, those utilities are going to keep moving those forwards, and other groups are going to continue to move those forward. So when and if that's going to happen, let's have the resources to partner farmers with those projects right away, and make the most out of that resource as possible. And make the most sounds like super exploitive to me. I just mean, like, we should keep it as really valuable as a resource for people to continue to grow, and at the very least with natives, that it can be as good of a habitat as possible.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome, excellent point, and how you're trying to regenerate the land and using solar as a part of that regenerative process is really impactful and powerful for sure. And I love that you said you're using like native plants and native grasses and flowers and things of that nature. We've had a lot of speakers who on prior podcasts who are like, oh, I'm a flower grower, or I'm into mushrooms, or I'm into urban farming. And so, or native plantings, and how important that is. And so it all kind of comes together each little podcast, where I feel like we're building a skill set and learning more and more. And a lot of our listeners are flower growers. And so for them to know as well that they can use solar in their outfit and how they are sustaining the land and also how they're doing the landscaping of their land and setting up the land. And then also greenhouses, which would be something that I had never heard of. And it would also just be such a great use in an urban setting because there's a lot of greenhouses in the urban setting. And that's very, very, very popular as well. So, can you talk about how your minimalistic living kind of integrates or is part of the process with your solar farming?
Yeah. I mean, a phrase that you mentioned at the beginning of the interview was, even though we're just all little small cogs in the wheel. And I think from a very early age, I didn't want to be a cog in anybody's wheel. So as I learned about these systems and I either didn't like what I saw or it didn't align with my values and things like that, I just thought, I'm not going to participate in that system. So, I mean, we could have a whole separate podcast about housing, but housing sizes, the fact that you can have a minimum home square footage requirement, and that's the most important thing in a neighborhood as opposed to like the environmental and the building code stability of that home is like a little bit mind-boggling to me. And previously, most of my work was in field biology, so I was moving around quite a bit every 9 months, every year, whatnot. And so the most stressful part of my job or just existing was like constantly being looking for a new place and how to afford it. And a lot of places I went like without hooking everything, like I just didn't turn on the heat and I just had extra layers and because I was like, I don't want to set up another bill and have it come to me for a couple months and do this. And so I would go to the library and use their Wi-Fi, and it just was like, this system isn't working for me, isn't built for me. And I started learning more about tiny houses. I'm 5 feet tall, so not a large person, so I can be in a small space. And it just really fit with my lifestyle at the time and trying to have less things to be responsible for in an increasingly complex environment to navigate and to feel like I'm responsible for so many things. And so, yeah, I have my house now. It's designed to be entirely off grid. It's not hooked up, but there's a wood stove behind me. I'm not going to move my thing, but you would see it if I extended the view a little bit. So the main heating source is the wood stove. And then it will have solar, about 4 kW system, which is way more than I need. But in Wisconsin, the record right now for low to no sun days is 21 days, with 18 days being something we've hit more significantly in the past couple of years. So that's a long time for my batteries to last. So although they wouldn't last that long, they would last about a week or so, I would always have the wood stove to keep me warm. And I can cook on top of it and things like that. So like I would be fine. I also have friends and I could go to their normal homes if I really wanted to. But just like thinking about that resiliency and security for myself is really important to me. Being able to take care of and just kind of hunker down in my own situation is what I needed. I planned this space initially for Canada because that's when I was living when I worked with the people that designed kind of the footprint of it I designed it for Canadian winters. So it's very well insulated and things like that. So that was just a part of how I've lived my life, my values for myself. Autonomy is extremely important to me. Probably no surprise working for myself. But yeah, it was just a part of not having to feel like I'm that cog, not having to feel like I'm in an environment where consumerism is the most important to me and where I can spend a little bit more time and money outside and on, I'm going to call what I do growing because it's not large enough to be fair to be calling it farming. But I do grow a lot of my own food and freeze it for the winter and things like that. And I have the time to do that because I don't have to work I kind of do work a 60-hour week because I don't have to work like an 80-hour week to afford a really expensive home. Like I can put it towards seeds and other things. So I've been able to structure towards spending my time and money on things that I really care about because I have very low costs. So really kind of what it comes down to.
Yes, I am all for the low cost. Yes, all day, every day. It is empowering when you have low costs. And I love that what we're talking about, we've talked about farming and being sustainable and self reliant. And we've talked about solar and how you can empower yourself economically and also have more autonomy and control, and also have more customization to your own personal usage of electricity, how you use it, when you use it, how you have it set up, if you have it on your roof or on your greenhouse or in the ground. And I'm sure there's probably other ways, but yeah, it just really allows people to have control and autonomy and self reliance, and then also just to be able to be economically viable and more robust and more vibrant, which is always super duper exciting. And that totally parlays into living a more minimalistic and sustainable lifestyle, and how you can have control over your heating source, and you have control over, like, you can always find wood and it's not going to be too expensive. And then, the sun will be out. And so you'll have your electricity, but then also you'll still have your community of people to be there for you and to support you and to care for you, which is super, super important. So I really appreciate you coming on. Could you just give us one little nugget of like a growing tip, and then also how our community can reach out to you to get resources regarding solar?
Nugget of a growing tip. I feel like from a growing sense, I don't have anything new to say to people, but I have been composting pretty much everything that the scraps from our commercial office kitchen and things like that. And one thing I noticed this year in the compost is some of the paper that ended up in there that may have had kind of that like plastic or wax coating, all the little invertebrates, all the little nematodes doing their jobs, left like the plastic film, but ate everything else. So it was really easy to pick out and throw away. Not saying that those things should be in your compost, but it's pretty incredible, those systems that are breaking things down. And if you don't talk to people in your community lovingly about compost, you should. Because I've seen so many people get excited about dirt, especially like kids. And it's a small thing. It's another one of those like cog in the wheels, but where like we can reduce so much waste and bring so much more life into our systems if we're talking to people about compost and getting them excited about it and not making them feel like they're going to do it wrong or like make a big mistake. Like it does seem to me like it's pretty hard to mess up. So I guess unrelated to everything I've said today, my nugget is composting. Get people excited about it. I love dirt that I make from food waste. I just put it on all of my raised beds and it makes me so happy to dig it up. Yeah. Was there another thing besides a nugget?
Yeah, just how we can reach out to you and learn more about your expertise in solar.
Yeah. So I have too many different emails, but probably the email that I check the most is the one at the Couillard Solar Foundation, which would be ELISE at couillardsolarfoundation.org, which is COUILLARD, the word solar, the word foundation.org. And April probably posts things in a way that you could click it digitally too if you wanted to. And if people reach out to April and they want my phone number, whatnot, that's fine as well. I just don't usually give it on this public of a forum.
For sure.
But yeah, happy to talk to people. And if I don't know the answer, get you connected with someone who I think would. And definitely if you want some resources on just how to like network and build more of a community around these types of topics, let me know. Because that's something that I do feel like I've done a good job at cultivating in different circles around Wisconsin, and would be happy to branch out and do more with that.
Well, Elise, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us all about the wonder and the beauty and the economic empowerment of solar. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us all today.
Yeah, thank you. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or review. It really helps others to find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business, operations, and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days, and you'll never get billed. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 per year. You'll get a year of the magazine plus 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Head over to Growing for Market and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers for farmers and Growing for Market magazine.